let's talk about the Apollo Transco lacquer fire. So at one point in the 80s, Transco was in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and Apollo was in California. And I went to visit Transco. I was probably one of the only people in the universe who cared about a place that made lacquers. But I cared about it, so I went to visit them. But they showed me how they make lacquers, and it's a very interesting process. And it basically, if you've seen videos of making chocolate, where the chocolate bars go on a conveyor belt, and the chocolate gets sprayed on it, and it goes through, and then they collect the chocolate at the bottom, and then it comes back up and around. And it's kind of like that, except the lacquers taste better. And so I saw that. And then Transco got sold to Apollo, and they have two separate lines. They did have two separate lines out there because they were slightly different processes and slightly different formulations, and some people preferred the Apollo and some people preferred the Transco. But I said at the time, that's crazy. They're both going to be in the same building. What if there's an earthquake? I didn't think about a fire because these companies have both been operating for 60, 70 years, and there have been no fires, even though methyl cellulose or whatever that chemical is very, very volatile and can explode. So when the fire happened, it was like a terrible, terrible disaster. And so what it means is this: Apollo Transco produced 80% of the lacquers used in the world. MDC in Japan produces 20%. A number of years ago, Apollo had some issues. They were producing some noisy lacquers, and people were complaining. So Bernie Grundman Mastering and Kevin Gray both switched to MDC. So everything that Bernie and Kevin do, which includes a lot of people's favorite records, a lot of jazz reissues, those reissues will continue coming. There'll be no problem because they're MDC. MDC cannot take on any more clients, so they're booked solid. But at any rate, Bernie's solid and Kevin Gray is solid. Also, some European companies have switched over to MDC. I think Palace and some of the other mastering engineers. But most of the alternative rock people, Mobile Fidelity, and a bunch of other labels are dependent upon Transco Apollo. And there is a certain amount of surplus lacquers that were made. There's a rumor that I heard that a consortium of people got together and said, let's get a 6-month supply in advance. Let's invest in a 6-month supply of lacquers just in case something happens, so we're covered. Whether that happened or not, I don't know. It might have. And if it did happen, you're not going to know about it, and I'm not going to know about it. But if it happened, hopefully there will be a 6-month supply of lacquers to cover it until either Transco Apollo gets back up and running, or there's a story that I heard, it's not been confirmed, that there's a company in France that manufactures tape, that got back in the tape business, that originally supplied Capitol with all of its lacquers during the 50s and 60s in the heyday of Capitol, that got out of the lacquer business. But 6 months ago, they saw this was, again, a business that might succeed, so they started making lacquers. It's not easy making good lacquers. So they've been working at it for 6 months, so I've been told, and that at some point in the next few months, they will be ready to start supplying lacquers again to pick up the slack lost by Transco Apollo. It's going to be a problem, though. How big a problem, we don't yet know.
Do you think prices are going to go up in the interim or long term?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense that they would do that. I don't know why you would say, oh, well, our records are now going to be more costly because we can make them and you can't. It would be stupid to do that. What we should do is say, thank God you can make records, and let's make records. And a lot of lacquers were cut and plated a long time ago for Record Store Day. I think Record Store Day will be fine because a lot of those were done a long time ago. When a lot of these reissues come out at 33 and then they come out at 45 later, many times it's not because they get the tapes back and cut them again. When they cut the 33, they cut it at 45 and played it and have it ready. So a year after you buy the 33, they can make you buy it again at 45 if you want it. So there's some of that also. So a lot of stuff is in the can and plated and ready to be pressed. Nobody's divulging how much of what. It's not going to be great. It's terrible that this happened, but I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as we thought. And there are DMM cutter heads all over Europe. When I visited Optimal, they've got, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 DMM cutting systems. They also make their own copper plates. So some of that will pick up the slack. I know I believe at Reckitt Industry in the Netherlands, they've got some DMM cutting systems. So there'll be cutting systems and plates available, and maybe the Scientologists will sell some of their DMM cutting systems because they've got a bunch. You know about that story, right?
They have all their records stored on vinyl or something?
They've got all of L. Ron Hubbard's. I'm going to say this now, and if I disappear next month, you'll know why. So what happened was, in the 90s, they decided that and they were right, the most robust format to store things on is records, is analog. So they bought a bunch of DMM lathes, and they started cutting metal parts of L. Ron Hubbard's speeches, and they actually set up a state-of-the-art plating. You're gonna hear this and go, "This guy's so full of shit," but this is true. So they set up a high-quality plating system at RTI, and this is what helped save RTI in the days when vinyl was going away. And they would cut the metal parts, they would send them to RTI, RTI would plate them, and then they would cover them in like an aluminum pop-top can sort of thing with a tab, and it would seal the metal part inside, and you could pop the tab and open it and play that. And they were like hieroglyphics on the outside saying, take this, and there were actually turntables. This is all stored in the Mojave Desert now. There are actually turntables with solar-powered arrays to get the thing spinning.
Wow.
And there are turntables with cartridges that have no elastomer so that it won't deteriorate over time. And at some point in the future, when the coronavirus kills us all, or some orange-haired guy does, what'll happen is we'll all be gone, and the next civilization that comes along, the next living entity, will find this thing in the desert and open the door, and it's like looking into the Tutankhamun in Egypt, and they'll find all this weird stuff, but it'll all be there in hieroglyphics, and they will take out the turntable. They will put it to the sun. They will pop the tab. They will put the record on, and they will hear L. Ron Hubbard's stuff. And they will say, well, clearly, this L. Ron Hubbard must have been the most important person in the entire civilization of the 21st century. And the joke will be on us, not the Scientologists. People can mock them, but they will have been correct.